Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Gentle Healing Podcast. I am your host, Beth McIntyre, a certified emotion, body, and belief code practitioner. Today's episode may be a little bit longer because I wanted to talk about something very personal to me, and that is actually my own deeply personal results with the body code. And one in particular change or result that I've experienced myself since first discovering the emotion code and then subsequently the body code and the belief code. So, if you don't really know anything about my story, maybe you're new to following me, growing up, and I guess one of the biggest reasons why I eventually got into this kind of work is because growing up I was deeply depressed from my early to mid teens. I was just someone who's very deeply depressed. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and then later on in my early 20s, another psychologist diagnosed me with bipolar, but I don't really think that diagnosis was very correct. There were other things going on in life that were kind of triggering certain things. But anyway, the point is that I was not always like a very happy girl. And even in my 20s, and even into my late 20s, and even my early 30s, probably into my late 20s, I didn't really consider myself to be like a very happy person. And then even maybe I think around my late 20s was really when I discovered sort of like mindset work and this kind of inner work that I started doing with myself, right? Like mindset work, NLP, and then kind of like spiritual coaching and courses like this. And what originally propelled me into this work was money issues. But it turned out to be something much deeper than that. It was really kind of like the start of my journey with, starting to feel happier and realizing I could kind of shift my mindset. But and that helped to an extent, right? Like when I originally discovered the emotion code, I no longer really consider myself to be like a depressed person. I didn't really identify with that anymore. But the biggest thing for me, and this has really been the biggest shift that I've experienced since using the emotion code, body code, and belief code, is that I still had a very low emotional baseline. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. Like for me, I generally considered myself like quote unquote happy, right? But when all was said and done, and when I would like stop and be still, or, have nothing else going on, or I've lived by myself for a long time now, so I spend a lot of time alone. And when I would be finished with my work and, there was nothing excitement, there was no excitement, and, maybe, just sitting down, maybe ready to go to bed or whatever. And like there was just nothing going on. And I was in silent stillness. And all these emotions would rush to the surface. They were always there, obviously. They were like kind of underlying. But I had all these kind of like external life things to like distract myself with them, right? And there are obvious distractions, right? Like social media or Netflix or food or just constantly like doing exciting things, like being around people, constantly being busy. But, there were other distractions, like constantly trying to like, feeling like I was like being ambitious or having big goals and always working towards something. There was like one thing when I would, finish one thing, then I'd be straight into the next thing. And it was like constantly go, go, go. And so I think a lot of people can really relate to this, right? I was recently talking to someone where she said she didn't like being alone. She didn't like being still because for her, what it brought up was like a feeling of anxiety. And so that was a bit different to me. Like for me, back to the point. So when I first came across the emotion code, the book, I still, while I no longer considered myself to be like depressed per se, I still had this very low like emotional baseline. When I was sitting down in silence by myself, like in stillness, my emotional state was still very low. And all these feelings, for me, the feelings that were always underlying were kind of like sadness or despair, hopelessness, a lot of helplessness. And I had thoughts, right? Like that, these feelings were because of this external circumstance or this external circumstance. And I had thoughts that were like, well, if I could just change this, then I'd feel better. And if I could just change this, I could just reach this goal. But the thing was, like, it didn't matter what goal I reached. Like, then that would be the next goal, right? Like, if I could just reach this goal then, or just do this, or have this. And we all probably have these, Like, we feel that to some extent, differing extents depending on the person, that like the external circumstances are what is gonna make us happy. But honestly, and the reason I can say this now is because some of those external circumstances are exactly the same. A lot of them have changed, but some of them, the ones that I used to have as excuses or like, why I was unhappy, they haven't necessarily changed. Yet I no longer have kind of any like negative kind of thought patterns around them. So the point is, like, my emotional baseline was still very low. And I would also, like, while I no longer consider myself to be suicidal, far from it, not at all. There was obviously a point in my life when I was quite young where I definitely considered myself to have those kind of tendencies when I was like kind of at some of my lowest points. But, now, like, we're talking like in my early 30s now, when I first found the emotion code, like no way, I was far from that kind of state where I would not have identified with being suicidal at all. But when I'd get still, when I'd have these underlying feelings, I would still have thoughts of like, oh, how easy it would be to just end it all. They were like these intrusive thoughts. Of course, I was not going to act on them. I did not have the feeling that I wanted to act on them. But like they were almost like a kind of relief, like, oh, like, I just feel like these thoughts were like these feelings, these negative feelings that I had of hopelessness and helplessness and sadness and just despair. There was like existentialism. There was so much. And I just felt like they were never going to change. And so I would have these intrusive thoughts of like, well, it would just be so easy to like end it all, or like how it was like a relief, right? And so many things have changed in my life. But the biggest difference now between when I first found the Emotion Code book and now after years of practicing it on myself and having sessions with other practitioners as well, is that now when I'm still, when I'm silent, when, like that feeling of like a Netflix episode is finished and, you kind of turn off the TV and you're just sitting there for a minute. Like now what's there is nothing. And I don't mean that in like I'm emotionally detached or like a numb kind of way. I mean that in like now my emotional baseline is neutrality. Like I've lifted my emotional baseline so much now that now when I'm still, I don't just suddenly like dip down into like despair and sadness. I no longer feel the need to like distract myself from my own feelings. And this was something that I noticed, like it didn't happen overnight, right? But every single trapped emotion I released, every single belief system I released, every single session I do on myself and with other practitioners, it was like little by little, I noticed that my emotional baseline was lifting. And like there were times when I like dipped back down and back up, depending kind of like what was going on and, kind of like what layers were being brought to the surface. But now, like, I don't know how long it's been, but I really, like, it's been weeks, months now since I've sat down and been like, holy shit, like, I feel sad. Like, it just doesn't even, when I stop now, when I sit in stillness, I just feel calm. Like it's just neutral. Like that's the only really way to express it. It's just like a very neutral, like with no external kind of influences, nothing kind of making my emotions like bounce up and down. I just feel calm. I just feel neutral. I feel like this very kind of contentedness. And additionally, what's happened, that has been like huge for me because as I said, like I dealt with this for decades, right? Like probably close to like 2 decades of maybe around 2 decades of feeling like very low, like probably, at least 1 decade, maybe 1.5 decades, 10 to 15 years of really feeling like quite low. And I did a lot of things in my 20s to try and escape this feeling. Mainly for me, it was like travel and living overseas and traveling between countries and moving around between different countries. Like I remember when I was younger, I had a lot of thoughts of like, oh, I'm just not happy because I don't like where I live. If I could just find my home, like where I wanted to live. And now in my 30s, like I realize, that was very misplaced, and we all do this to an extent. Maybe we do it with different things, like when I just find my person, when I just make more money, when I just have a job I like, whatever it is, when I just move to the house I want, when I can finally move to the country I want, whatever it may be, right? We all have these external things that we kind of like attach to, like that's going to be the thing that's going to bring us happiness. And I knew this for a long time, but no matter what, I would still come back to this, underlying current of like deep kind of like sadness, right? And I tried, and this was a big thing for me, like, because by the time I found the emotion code, I'd already been doing this kind of work, like, work of like Joe Dispenza, and I practiced a lot of, being present, like Eckhart Tolle, and I worked with a lot of coaches and did a lot of courses. And as I said, I did a lot of meditation and breath work and other somatic exercises. And, I went to retreats and I journaled and mindset work and all of that. I'd done a lot of that. And as I said, it helped to an extent. Like I definitely felt a lot better than I used to previously. But my emotional baseline was still low. And that was a thing that really kind of got me down, especially like in the years like just before finding the emotion code, and even like in those early stages when I had these tools, but like I was still working through the stuff. And as I said, it wasn't an overnight process. It took sessions and sessions of like releasing stuff to really truly, for me, lift my emotional baseline. And I had so many times when it was just, I felt completely helpless. I felt like a victim to my own emotions, because I felt like, well, I'm doing all the right things. I'm doing all this work. Why is my internal state just like not changing? Why do I still keep coming back to these, really negative feelings whenever I kind of get still, whenever I'm like alone, whenever like, that feeling of like, okay, I think we've probably all been there at some taste or something. Like you have like some really exciting event, maybe like a concert or a festival or like some, a wedding, a big, big birthday party, a vacation, whatever it may be, right? You have this really big event where there's like a lot of excitement, a lot of build up, and then the event comes and like it's a lot of excitement in the event, right? And then after, like, you come home from the event and everything's kind of like still, and you almost get like a down, right? You have like a huge down. But I'd have that like feeling just like whenever I would just kind of stop, right? Whenever I'd say I'd been out with friends and then I'd come home and I get that feeling. Or like I'd finish work for the day and I'd stop and I kind of get that feeling. And it caused me to like a lot of, there'd be days when I would just sit at home crying. And honestly, I didn't even know why I was crying. Like I just had that emotional baseline that was very low. And there was other things like that were kind of like piled on top of it as well. I think that, again, these were all things that I worked through with the emotion code, body code, and belief code. Like I had a lot of shame around it because like my life was pretty good. My life has always been pretty good. I haven't gone through anything, externally, like, deeply traumatic, or, there was nothing kind of logically in my external circumstances. I've always been very privileged, And so there was a lot of like shame and guilt like piled on top of the already feeling quite low. And so it like just kind of like snowballed, right? So there was a lot of kind of layers there that I had to release, because to me, like logically, it made no sense. Like, why was I always feeling this way? And then like I would snowball into like, well, I feel so shamed because I'm so privileged, yet I still feel so sad. I still feel this way. And then I'd get into this spiral of like, oh, Like, am I ever going to be able to change? Like, why have I done all this work? Why am I doing all this work? What is the point of this if I'm still going to come back to these super low states? And it's not until now, like a couple of years, more than a couple of years of working consistently with the emotion code, body code, and belief code to release all this like trapped emotional bullshit that was inside my body, all these negative belief systems and other imbalances that, were inside my body, kind of negative energies and whatnot. 2.5 years, maybe around that, like of diligently, consistently working through this. And slowly, little by little, my emotional baseline just continues to increase. And on top of that, I used to think, like, people say that, like when you've been through some tough stuff, you become emotionally resilient. But I guess for me, it wasn't like that. I guess I had a lot of trapped emotional energy in my body. And so I was very sensitive. I was actually not emotionally resilient at all. Like, it was like I'd been through some tough stuff, and I thought logically like I'd healed from it all. And like when I would think back on a lot of it, like I could still look back on it with a lot of like thankfulness, like a lot of gratitude. Yet my body was kind of telling me a different story, right? I still had a lot of that like emotional like trauma trapped in my body that I didn't logically realize. And I forgot my train of thought now. Amazing. I totally forgot the train of thought I wanted to say. I was trying to say something, but I forgot. Oh well. But yeah, that was a thing, emotional resilience, right? So yeah, like I used to be very sensitive, and and I, like, little things would get me down and they'd cause me to spiral quite easily. And so now that's another thing. Like, not only has my emotional baseline increased quite dramatically, but it takes a lot to kind of like knock me off my center as well. Like before, it was very easily for me to be knocked off center, like maybe one kind of tiny thing. I like get emotionally knocked off my, my center. And it was very easy for me to spiral from that. And then I could get trapped in that for days. And now, like, something small happens and yeah, okay, it may annoy me in the moment. I may feel anxious for, a few moments or something. It depends what it is, of course. But, like, I no longer kind of get swept away in that emotional current. That's been a big thing as well. Like, I'm able to kind of stay balanced and less emotional, like in like a very, like when I get triggered, it's very minimal. I don't like fly off into like some crazy large emotions that just seemed like really, when like something small happens and you just suddenly have like this emotional reaction that feels very disproportionate to what's actually taking place. That used to happen to me all the fucking time. And that no longer really happens, right? Like, sure, sometimes, of course, like I'm still human and there's still things that trigger me, but they trigger me like kind of far less. And when I am triggered, like I can come quite back into a neutral state or like a positive state, like quite a lot more quickly or easily than I used to be able to. And that's been a big thing for me too. And this is not to say that like I no longer experience emotions, like I'm still human. When external circumstances, happen, like say something quite, sad happens in my life, luckily, touch wood, like nothing has really, happened recently that's, been deeply, unfortunate. Touch wood, nothing really happens soon. But when of course there are things in life that are sad and things in life that make you happy and whatnot, and angry and anxious and whatever, like I'm still human. I still feel these emotions. Like the point of this work is to not make you into some robot, right? Like we've got enough AI already. We've got enough AI already. Like we don't need more robots. The point's not to become a robot. It's just to allow, like it's to be able to be more of like a channel for emotions. Emotions are meant to just flow through you, and we are able to like feel them and let them go. That's kind of like what's meant to happen. But because when we have a lot of trapped emotional energy in our body and we have all these faulty belief systems and whatever, the energy comes and it can like stay in the body. It gets amplified by the trapped emotional energy that's already there. And so like we hold on to this energy, it doesn't like flow through us as easily as it should. And that sometimes you can feel a little bit angry, but then if you've got a lot of anger already trapped inside you, that emotion gets amplified. And so you feel really angry, and that's why you feel, you get triggered so easily by something like logically very small, because your body is already holding on to a lot of emotion. And so by releasing that, like, we're still feeling emotion. We're not becoming like normally the people that are like more detached from emotion, like very, very cold. Those people actually also have a lot of trapped emotional energy. It's just that they've, basically it's overwhelmed their system. So instead of feeling it, they just shut off from it, right? That's not the point. So the point is not to become like a robot. I feel emotion very easily. In fact, I can access all types of emotions, like very easily. I could be a very good actor. Like now when I wake up, and this was funny thing, like when I was growing up, when I was younger and in my teens and my 20s, like even though I had goals, like external goals and dreams and stuff, my number one goal in life, which just now just seems so silly when I think about it, but my number one goal in life, like truly my deepest, most desired thing that I had was to be genuinely happy. And now, like, I can truly say that I am. Like, I really, truly am. Like, happy can be quite a surface level, we associate it with something quite surface level. But, like, it's a deep satisfaction, like a deep fulfillment, a deep, deep, profound gratitude that I feel. It's like, yes, happiness, but it's like a deep, deep happiness that I feel within my body. It's just like this content and this satisfaction that like I feel it ringing throughout my whole body every single day. It's very, very, very easy for me to feel a state of gratitude or a state of love. Like that before, like that would have been impossible for me. And now, like, I just wake up feeling that way. And it has nothing to do with anything in the external at all. Of course, like if good things happen to me, of course I feel like I feel happy, I feel grateful for them. But sometimes even like world is falling apart around me, yet I can still wake up feeling this deep sense of gratitude for my life. Weirdly, like it's just there naturally. Like that's kind of my default state now. And my default emotional baseline now just is like gratitude. Like it's neutrality, but it's just this deep sense of like fulfillment and gratitude. And I just wake up now, like I used to wake up so many times, like, and even in the more recent times, like 6 months ago, a year ago, like I'd still wake up plenty of days in a row where like things weren't kind of going how I wanted to in certain things in my life. Maybe it was a business, or like maybe I was feeling a bit lonely, like I wanted a partner, or like, I don't know, just general stress in life. And I'd wake up feeling like, oh, like just like just slow, just heavy, like I just don't want to get out of bed. And now, like, I wake up and sometimes I choose to stay in bed. Like, just the day before yesterday, I woke up, I made myself breakfast and coffee, went back to bed, sat in bed, and did work for like 3 hours in bed with my breakfast and my coffee. But like, it's still like, and then I got out of bed and went about my day, like, it's still, like, it's a very different kind of like, oh, I want to roll back over, I don't want to get up, I don't want to start my day. I can just look out the window at the sky and just feel like this deep sense of gratitude. Like there's no big, profound external, events or circumstances that are happening that I need to be able to like reach for that now. And if you told me that, like the version of me that was like 20 years old or 25 years old or 15 years old or even 30 years old, that would be the case, that like life could actually be like this. Even like last year, even when I was going through some tough stuff and I was still working through that, and I would still get these kind of lower periods, like if you told that younger version of me that like, no, it won't always be like this, like I probably wouldn't have even believed you. You know what I mean? Like I probably wouldn't have even believed that it was possible, because there were so many times when I sat there and I would come back to that low emotional baseline and cry and just feel completely helpless. And there have been so many like results that I have seen in my life, like in my own personal experience using the emotion code, body code, and belief code. And honestly, like a lot of them are amazing. Like there are many, many amazing results that I've had, many, many changes and shifts in my own life. But if there was one that like I hold most kind of like deeply to myself, like the one that like if none of the others existed and just this one, I could carry this one with me, like this would be the one change for me that like makes it all worth it. You know, like because like there are so many changes that I've gone through, like physical changes. Like I think I've talked about this. I don't know. Like I had chronic lower back pain, right? And there were some days like throughout my life when that was quite debilitating, and I had that for like 15 years, 14 years or so. And there was some times when it was quite debilitating, you know. And I tried so many different things, and there have been other things like my relationship with money, and dating and relationships, and my business, and I don't know, like just like where I live, and I don't know, just I could go on, right? Like I don't know, like my relationship to food and health, and there are so many things, right? That I've my feelings that I used to feel, these feelings I used to feel of like anxiety and constantly feeling rushed, and you know all these things that I've experienced, all these change, like some of them now, like I don't even think about them. You know, there are other changes I probably had that like because they've gone now, I can't even remember that I had them. But this change, like of my internal emotional landscape, my emotional baseline, like this is something that is with me, like 24/7, 365, right? You know, like we are always with our emotional internal landscape, right? This is something that I'm constantly living in. And so there is absolutely not one change that I've experienced that like would even come close to this. This is by far the one that I hold so close to my heart, you know. Like I could have zero other changes and I would be so fucking thankful. Like this one for me has just changed my entire life. You know, we are the only person that is constantly 24/7 experiencing what our internal world is like, right? Like no one else has to live with that. We are the ones that have to live with our own internal world constantly. And as I used to do, you know, we can use distractions and external things to avoid it, you know, to distract ourselves from feeling these feelings. But like for me, I always felt this sense of kind of like emptiness. Like I don't know if you ever felt this. Like I would go, like this is a less kind of extreme example, but sometimes when things were like pretty decent in life, like all over in general, I would get this kind of like feeling of like I craved something. And I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. Like maybe it was like chocolate, or maybe it was like some kind of excitement, or, you know, like watching something good. Like I just wanted something to happen. I craved something. And like, or maybe I just wanted a really good meal, so I'd go out and I'd get a good meal, I'd eat some chocolate, or like, you know, I'd do these things, like maybe I'd go ride my motorbike, or like I would travel to a new country or whatever, right? Like I'd try and, you know, kind of like feel these cravings that I couldn't really work out what they were for. I could just feel like I was like searching for something, I needed something, like some kind of external thing, right? Like it's such a weird feeling, like I needed something. And I think often we all do this, right? Like it's like, okay, well, we finished this, now we're on to the next thing, and straight on to the next thing. And even oftentimes, like without realizing it, we have like so many distractions now. Like we could constantly go our whole lives now easily. So much information, so many distractions, so many things in life. You could easily go and just completely avoid like these underlying feelings that you're feeling. But like, at what cost? Right? Like now I can sit in silence, I can sit in stillness. Like now, and actually this is the biggest thing for me. Now I know when I have goals and dreams, and when I'm going out to do something, like say for example I have a goal in my business, or a monetary goal, or I want to learn a new skill, or I want to find a partner. Like now I know these goals are coming from a very clean place. I'm not using them anymore to try and fill some emotional need or some like emotional gap or some space, some emptiness that I feel I have, whether that's conscious or unconscious, right? Like now I know that these desires I have, like they're just clean. Like I just want to experience it, you know what I mean? Because it's fun. I just want to have that because it looks fun. You know what I mean? Like cool, but I like it. It also like dilutes my attachment to things, because I'm not placing so much emphasis on it because that's what's going to make me happy, right? Like it just is. It's just fun now. If I don't get it, like I also don't care. You know what I mean? Like there's not so much attachment to things anymore. Sure, like I have this goal and like I'm probably going to make the goal. Or like if I want it, I know I can get it. But like I'm not like desperately trying to cling on to it because I'm not using it as my external source of validation or happiness or fulfillment or satisfaction or whatever it may be, right? And like life in general just feels light and easy and playful and fun. So yeah, that is my story. It was a little bit of a long episode, but it was shorter than I was expecting, so that's really good. So yeah, that's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening. And as I said, this wasn't something that happened overnight, right? Like this was consistently working with the emotion code, body code, and belief code. And it was through this consistent work that I was able to increase, like every single session, my emotional baseline was increasing, right? Like it was a gradual process because that's how it works. And yeah, so if you heard yourself in this, if you are someone who has all these distractions because there are some feelings you're avoiding, like honestly, the emotion code, body code, belief code seriously make it so easy to release this emotional energy and these belief systems that are causing this low emotional baseline. Because in general, we should have this baseline of neutrality or, contentedness or calm. Like our natural state is gratitude, it is love, right? Like these very much are our natural states. So if you notice when you're in stillness that your natural state is actually quite low, or maybe it's anxious, or, some kind of underlying feeling of dread, then consistent body code work may be for you. And so you may like to check out the Private Root Reset, which is my signature 8-week healing sequence. It's 8 weeks of body code sessions, 1 session per week. All my sessions are delivered by email, so it makes the process extremely, extremely easy. There are no appointments, no calls, no Zoom calls, nothing. I do the session as you go about your day, whether you're sleeping, working, handling the kids, doing housework, whatever it may be. And then I send you the full report of what was released after, and you do not have to do anything else. You just let the body process as it's meant to over the next few days. And naturally, you just notice yourself, your emotional baseline will slowly start to increase and get better. And you'll just feel lighter and happier and generally more grateful and satisfied with life. So I'd love to see you inside that container. You can go over to my website, which I'll leave in the show notes. Check out the container. It's all you have to do is submit like kind of what your symptoms are, how you feel, and I basically do everything else for you. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye, lovelies.